Hello, good morning and welcome. We're back in the virtual studio for another episode of Symbiosys. And today we are joined by two fantastic guests, the CEO, Patrick Assheton-Smith of Symbiosys IT and Gurminder Singh from GroundLabs. And I'm going to ask them both to introduce themselves very, very shortly. Now, wherever you're watching this, wherever you are, maybe you're in South Africa, maybe you are in the UK or Europe, maybe if you're up really early, you're maybe watching us in North America. Wherever you are, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we hope you enjoy the next 45 minutes where we're going to be taking a deep dive into data discovery, all that data management, security and compliance. And we're going to see some live demonstrations and hopefully be more informed and educated before the end of today's show. So good morning, Patrick, the CEO for Symbiosys IT. Just for our listeners and viewers, just tell us a little bit more about Symbiosys IT and your role and what it is that Symbiosys does.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, hi. I'm the CEO of the business of Symbiosys. We're an integrator and solutions provider. We've got operations mainly out of Cape Town and out of the UK. And we provide solutions around migration, integration, automation, security, compliance, cybersecurity, all of those kinds of things. And we work with customers all around the globe. I think we've worked in about 36 countries, and we are still expanding our reach.
Fantastic. Great to have you here again, Patrick. It was a great conversation last time, so I'm sure we're going to have lots more exciting stuff. Gurminder, good morning. Welcome. I know it's your first time here with us in the studio, but tell us a little bit more about your role. I know you're a specialist at GroundLabs, but what does the specialist do?
Thank you so much, David. My name is Gurminder. I'm actually part of the pre-sales team at the moment, actually at GroundLabs. I've been part of GroundLabs for almost 6 years now, and I've actually been mostly involved in a lot of technology itself, and I've seen it actually evolve as well. I actually was part of the support team internally, and that's where I think the specialist word actually I think comes on. And then currently I've been actually part of the pre-sales, and we're actually helping organizations find their sensitive data.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, I know we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat, but if anyone is out there listening and they want to ask questions of either of our guests here, either Patrick or Gurminder, you can use your comment section on whatever social platform you are utilizing and pop that up, just as Etienne has. Morning, Etienne. Nice to see you, Pat. Looking forward to listening in today. So Etienne is tuned in. And if you are there, why not pop your question in the chat? We'll give you a shout out as well and say good morning and hello to you. Okay, so let's kick off a little bit here. We're talking about data management, security and compliance. Now, GroundLabs, as you've just mentioned, do look after a lot of this stuff. It's all about that data security. Gurminder, tell us a little bit more about what it is that GroundLabs actually does and how you are securing the data and how the product actually can benefit the end user and secure them.
Yep. Thanks for that. So what Enterprise Recon, so GroundLabs is actually focused on doing sensitive data discovery. And not only that, we're actually also helping organizations once you've found the data, what exactly are the actions you're going to take on that data once you've found it. In today's world, I think a common challenge with the administrators is the data is growing by the day, and it's getting harder and harder to actually, control how your sensitive data is spread across your organization. So what we do is we actually streamline that process. We ensure the administrators are able to find not only just sampling of sensitive data, but a deep dive of entire inventory in the organization. This could be both on cloud, this could be on premise. We scan for both structured and unstructured data, and we bring back all the sensitive data which is in the organization, and that just gives the answer to where your data is. And once you've known the data, you've actually, you can go ahead and now take your a step further to actually go ahead and proceed towards actions on the data and what we call remediation of data. This is where you'll be able to take actions like masking, deleting, quarantining it, and encrypting it once you know that where the data is. And of course, Enterprise Recon, the tool, is actually deployed in 50 plus countries at the moment, and we are targeting not only just larger, but small, medium, large, and even some extra large environments. So it's very versatile and can be easily deployed in every organization.
Brilliant, fantastic. Patrick, over to you here. I know you are obviously installing these solutions into the end user clients, supporting them. How are you finding the partnership working with GroundLabs? I'm sure it's a fantastic partnership. Let's obviously put that out there first. But working with such a large organization and working around 36 plus countries around the world as well. Tell us a little bit more about how that relationship works and how you roll out the solutions to your clients as well.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I think our partnership works very nicely. We're trying to grow the business together in partnership. Symbiosis doesn't really worry too much about boundaries in terms of where we work, and GroundLabs is great because it's an international business working in all these different territories, so that works very well for us. But the quality of the product is really important, and it's quite unique in its in the way that it works. We're talking a single interface that allows us to take all the actions we need, from scanning and discovering to remediating once we found that, and then obviously doing the reporting and the measurement of progress in that space. And I think that's quite key and something that we love about it. We've seen quite a lot of tools where there's multiple different consoles trying to do multiple different aspects of that journey. That's where GroundLabs comes in and makes it very simple. And I think that's part of what I think we want to talk about today and show our audience today is the simplicity. It's actually a very complex, very difficult thing to do is find a needle in a haystack across multiple different platforms in different territories, in different clouds, whether the data is structured in a database or unstructured, lying on a file server somewhere, or worst case, it ends up lying in email, or it even lies on somebody's notebook, and that notebook goes walkabout. How do you go and find that data? How do you secure that data if you don't know it's there in the first place? I think that's really where the architecture of the solution really shines through, and I think we'll touch on that today. It's the most simple way to find a needle in a haystack, and then take some actions and measure that. So yeah, I think that for me is from a partnership perspective, it's working in all the territories together, and beyond that, it's obviously the quality of and the uniqueness of the solution itself.
Mm-hmm. And I know, Pat, you've got lots of questions that we're going to put to Gurminder to give kind of our listeners and viewers a taste of how the solution, the GroundLabs solution, can support all different types of clients, from the SME market, them small to medium-sized enterprises, up to very large corporates as well. And Gurminder's going to give us kind of a tour as well. He's going to actually do a live demo and talk us through that. So, Pat, out of the number of questions that you've got, do you want to fire one at Gurminder first, and then we'll get him back in, and let's see how we go forwards with the Q&A.
Yeah, I think we can touch on one thing. I think that, well, one or two things rather. I think, and then start talking about doing a demo or a tour rather of how the solution hangs together and works. I think for me, there's a very distinct difference. When we spoke about this in a previous Fireside chat a little while ago, was the concept of custodianship of data versus ownership of data. And I think it's a very important distinction and needs to be perhaps touched on now to provide context going forward. And really the big thing for me with data in businesses and enterprises is that business, or the people, business heads and the people creating and working with the data, are ultimately the owners of that data. They know what it is and they know what it's used for. We have a situation where the IT department or IS department tends to be labeled as the owners of those data, and that's not the case. They're actually the custodians of that data. So they have an idea of what it is, potentially, but they may not be in a position to take the best decision about what to do with that data. Yes, IT knows how to secure that data and know how to encrypt it if it's required, and put it in a secure location and manage access and all those good things. But in terms of actually taking the right decision about what to do with this specific data, they're not really the best people for that. That's business. So you have this situation where IT is trying to serve business, but actually what we should do, particularly when we're talking about the data itself, is actually allow business to take decisions about their data and make sure that the best decisions are taken. So that for me is very important about a distinction between custodianship and ownership. So that's something that I'd like Gurminder to take us through today in the tool. We'll probably do some scans, looks for some needles in the haystack, and then go through that component and how the solution enables that for the end users and how simple it is to achieve. So Gurminder, I don't know if you want to start doing a tour right now. Maybe we can go through the basic components and you can show me how we build scans and look for needles in a haystack, and we can go through the process.
Absolutely. And I'll just share my screen and I'll actually show you how it actually is going to look like. So we'll do a live demo here. So it's actually an interesting, and thank you so much for actually pointing out on that. And I think I'll actually start with the basic differentiations between custodians and ownership. And as rightly as you said, the person who's using the tool might not always be the right person who's going to be taking the decision on what exactly are the actions that we're going to take it. And we tackle this problem in various different ways, which the administrators or the IT department can set it up. So the one thing that actually we always, of course, offer is, you can integrate your Active Directory. And what this basically does is you're able to bring down all your domain users, and accordingly, based on the configuration that you actually have, you'll be able to assign different roles to these users. You'll be able to define, all right, I want the user 1 to be part of or responsible for a certain target or a certain target group, or you can even assign different roles and permissions to them. Additionally, the tool, once you've found the data, we also have something that we'll talk about, delegate remediation, wherein once you've found the data, you'll be able to not only just go through the data once you have it, but also take different permissions, or actually give different permissions to the users. For example, if I'm going through a target, I can just go ahead and say that, okay, this location can be directly handled by a particular user in the organization. You'll be able to define your customize the email that actually goes out to the user, and we can use the MTA to send out email alerts. You can even set out permissions you want to give to that user, that, okay, I want this user to have maybe full permissions to take the data, or maybe just, let's say, just a deletion of that data once the user receives it. And what this does is the user will actually get a custom link. The user can just simply click on it, enter the domain credentials, and go ahead and take the action on that data. Overall, the tool is created in such a way, or the console itself is created in such a way that actually it's not very complex. So even a non-technical person can actually just view and actually go and take action on the data that actually has been found inside the organization. And
it's also very easy to deploy. I mean, I think that's the other thing. I mean, it's a sealed box essentially. Not physical, virtual, that you spin up and is natively secure and good to go. And then you plug it into Active Directory if you've got Active Directory, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's actually a virtual appliance. So you don't need to prep a different operating system or install a database separately, or even a web server separately to actually have the appliance running. It's a virtual appliance. It'll already have its own OS, its own database, and own web server. Within 15 to 30 minutes, you would actually have your master server up and running. Then the actual scanning will be done by the agents, and we have all the approaches. You can actually install the agents directly onto the targets, or you can actually have both proxy and agentless scanning that actually can be configured to further scan your, this could be any of your target in the organization. And when I say target, I pretty much mean anything which is file servers, your local machines, your Windows desktops. All of them are actually considered as targets. So you'll be able to target your structured, unstructured, on both on cloud
and
and
those
on-prem.
targets,
Mm-hmm.
those targets are very, very broad. Databases, all different types of databases. Not just Microsoft SQL, for example. I know you guys have a huge amount of different databases, certain SaaS platforms, bucket blobs in AWS, for example, in Azure, and then obviously the traditional unstructured and obviously structured stuff. So it's a hugely diverse set of targets or target areas that you can scan.
Absolutely. There's a huge list. In fact, if I just quickly just give you a brief overview. So we don't only just scanning the local files, we can actually scan shadow volumes, and we can even scan the free disk space, which is pretty much the data that wasn't properly deleted and it still exists in the hard drive sectors. We can find and scan it. Together with that, we can also scan memory, and we can do network storages. So we have Windows Share, Unix Share, Remote Access via SSH, Hadoop, SDFS. Databases, as you mentioned, not just the traditional, the easiest, the MySQL and Microsoft SQL, but we go all the way from MySQL to SAP HANA, so including things like Teradata and InterSystems Cache, which is one of the most complex and high data hosting databases. Then you have emails, both internet mailboxes without SSL. You have HCL Node support, the website scans. You've briefly covered all the clouds as well, but you have Amazon S3, Azure Storage, queues, blobs, tables, Box, Dropbox, Exchange domain. If you have multiple mailbox servers and if you have CAS involved, we can actually integrate with the Active Directory and find out where each individual mailbox is hosted. Google Workspace, Mail, Tasks, Calendars and Drive, GCP, like Google Cloud Storage, M365, which of course includes the Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, Rackspace, and lastly this Salesforce. So there's the data repository, as we call them, targets. It's quite a lot. It's very, very huge, and accordingly to whatever you want to kick off the scan with, it's very easy to set up. Just select the location and you can point the scan to that.
And the other thing is just maybe to talk before we get into actually building some scans and getting to doing some scans on some targets is to maybe talk about your glass technology and what that's about. I think that's a very important part of the puzzle.
Absolutely. So GroundLabs, it's an acronym that actually we use, and it's for GroundLabs Accurate Search Syntax. It's actually a syntax that actually has been written all the way from ground up. And in comparison to what you've had, might have seen in the industry as standard is the regex. And the syntax was actually created with two things in mind. One, we want to make sure that the tool actually has a very, very high performance. So compared to what you would, if you compare it to regex, it's about 20x to 100x faster in presenting the results back to you, which in larger organizations actually it will make a lot of difference, because you don't want to spend on weeks and weeks and weeks to actually get your results back. The glass can actually do about 20x to 100x faster in terms of scanning. And then the second aspect of this is very few false matches. Of course, I'll be lying if I say you're never going to get any false match, but the tool, the syntax is created with in mind that we not only just have the industry checks, we also have some proprietary checks in place that ensures that the amount of the amount of matches that are actually coming back are actually all legit and actual matches, and the false matches are very minimal. In fact, even whenever you encounter any false match, you can just tag them as false match, and it'll not only be remembered for that time, but also for futures, it's automatically going to be considered as a false match as well. And that's where it really outshines, and this is why it's scanning data in larger data volumes. For example, scanning a Teradata, which is about more than 1 petabyte or maybe 2 petabytes, is very easy with glass as well.
Awesome.
Just very quickly, questions come in from Ryan here. Does the Enterprise Recon tool cover compliance requirements for multiple countries and territories? Possibly a very simple answer to that.
It's a very good question, and I think the simplest answer is yes. Yes, we do cover. In fact, we have Enterprise Recon running in 50+ countries and touching various different compliances. And we actually have 300 plus data types outside the box that are actually available for you to go ahead and configure, which are actually falling into different compliances. But as understood, with different compliances, each organization will have their own version of sensitive data, not just data, but actually what is sensitive to them. And based on that, they will be able to configure these scans from the 300 plus data type patterns that we have built in with Klaus. And in fact, on top of that, we also offer custom data. So anything that actually is not part of it, you can actually create your own custom data, and you can even, use it for, for example, under GDPR, we're actually required to run data subject access requests where you're looking for very specific information. This could be not just scanning all the passport numbers or all the email addresses, maybe a particular email address or a particular phone number or a particular passport number. Anything that is unique identifier, you can even use it to scan that with as well. So yeah, we definitely do cover it.
It's very useful, particularly in South Africa. There's one of the requirements of PAPIA is that if somebody asks you to please expunge all their data, or anything to do with them out of your systems, you need to be able to do that and prove that you've done that. This is a situation where you scan for all of that relevant data, and you can make sure that you've permanently deleted that data. So it certainly allows you to do that. I mean that. As you can see here, we've got patient health data, we've got national ID data, we've got personal information, financial information, and obviously then the PCR-related cardholder information, stuff like that. That's all out the box. But I mean, as you say, we can literally look for anything with the with the custom searches.
Yep.
If somebody were to have a very sensitive environment, perhaps it's or say it's not even sensitive, perhaps a risk, perhaps a higher risk environment like a call center where people are dealing with personal information quite frequently, may want to scan that environment more frequently to see if there's, if you're coming up with problems. Perhaps you can take us through how you would schedule to have that environment scanned and how you would limit, or throttle on, the scans and stuff like that for network considerations or WAN considerations, things like that.
Absolutely. So the very first thing is, when you're actually is to set up the scan, is to define all your targets that you have. Let's say in the example of call center, what we do is in the enterprise recon we call everything targets, and these targets can be put into logical groups. Now these are, of course, can be created by the departments. In this case, we'll assume that actually it's a call center department that actually you're going into, which is very basically you can actually store all the targets that actually belongs to a particular department. Of course, it's not mandatory to do that way. You can do it based on department. You can do it based on the type of servers. It's absolutely customizable, and you can change it at any time you would want to. The very first step is to just go ahead and select the location, and let's assume these are the targets that are part of that environment. Once you've selected the location, which is in this case is the call centers, the next step is to select what exactly would you want that to be scanned for. Now, some of the data type profiles we've created outside the box, these are the most common ones which are actually being used. So you'll see things like European health information, bank account information, old cardholder data. But like we just talked now, we can just click on the add button at the top, and you'll have access to the 300 plus data types that are already outside the box. And you can even scan for things like, let's say you're looking for national ID data, and that too very specifically you're looking for. I can just pick any one of them. Let's say you're actually looking for a UKNI number. You can actually create the profile name. This is exactly what I'm looking for. So once you've defined that, the next step after that is, and also before we go ahead, when you define a data type profile, you don't need to configure it again. It'll be listed as part of the data type profiles for the next time scan, so you don't need to repeat the process again. Once you've done that, the next step is basically to schedule a scan, which is either you want to do it right away, or you may want to actually schedule it for a later day or time. In fact, you don't need to even repeat the same steps that we just went through in terms of repeating of the scans. This tool itself is a BAU tool, so you can have the same schedule repeated after a certain frequency. You can schedule it, and this could be set from anywhere between every day to every year. You can, if there are different time zones, multiple time zones in which you have your environment set up, you can even select or define a specific time zone. And then again, you'll also be able to configure notifications for these scans. Now, we do notifications in two different ways, what we call alerts, and then there's an email notification as well. Alert is when you log into the console, and at the top right-hand side, there's a gray bell icon that gets highlighted if there's a notification triggered. Otherwise, you can send out, they can configure the email addresses, and we'll use your MTA to send out email alerts to the users that you notify. So what exactly happens with the scan based on the notification. So let's say you wanted to be notified if there were scans, if there were matches in it, and we'll actually notify on you. And then again, we have advanced options, what we call performance options. This is where you're able to configure post-scan windows. That is, your scans would automatically pause within a certain time, and you can define this for different days as well. You can limit the CPU priority. By default, we are running it on low priority, but you can amp it up by changing to normal. You can also limit the data search throughput, which is basically the speed at which the data is being read. Of course, this is hardware dependent, so it'll depend on your disk I/O or things like network bandwidth. But provided if there's available, the resources are available, you'll be able to customize them. You also can set the memory usage limits. Now, by default, we never exceed 1 gig of RAM for a particular scan. But if you have more resources available, you can always increase it, and that actually enhances the performance of the scan. So, for instance, if you assign 4 gig of RAM, it'll have more memory to actually hold data and process the data at a single time. And finally, we always present the contextual information as well. It's enabled by default, wherein, let's say we're looking for the UK NI number, we'll always capture information before and after the NI number, so that actually once you've known your data, it helps you to make a decision when you're moving towards the remediation stages, which is to take action on that data. It's enabled by default, but of course you can disable it if not needed. And in fact, even with enabled, you have different options of having view less mass detail, balance the quantity of files and mass detail, and even view maximum detail. And as soon as that's done, and it's pretty much just to go ahead and kick off a scan. Let's say if I do it right now, can click next. It'll just give you a summary, and you've just initiated a scan. And anything that is running inside the organization can actually be tracked. That is currently running, or actually maybe even supposed to run in the future. They can all be tracked in the schedule manager option in the UI, wherein you're going to see exactly what file path it's scanning at the moment. You're going to notice that what is the current percentage of the scan. So it's showing 0 because we just kicked off. And then also, if it actually has any matches found so far, it'll also display that to you.
And obviously, once it has run, and potentially if you set up an alert to get an email, you'll get an idea whether or not you need to go and have a look and take some actions. Maybe you can take us through some of what a report is like, and then obviously circling back to the to distributed remediation, how we can enable business users to go and take the best decision.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, all the matches that we've found inside the organization, they're all listed in the investigate page, and you can actually just simply click on the page to get all the locations where we found the matches. As soon as you actually enter, you're going to notice that you'll have all the targets. But let's say you're targeting and you're looking for very specific. For instance, you're looking at the S3 buckets only, and you'll actually start to get all the locations where we found the matches in them. In fact, it's similar to that. You can just click on any location. The location changes based on the type of target that you're actually scanning at the moment. And you notice that each location will have its individual number of matches that is detected inside them. And then if it actually was falling under any risks, which we can of course talk about as we go along. So let's say I wanted to maybe just click on any location to show you how the results look like. So I can just simply click on any location, and it'll present the details of that match now. So we also do things like risk profiling, wherein you're able to define risks inside your organization based on high, medium, and low. So for instance, if the organization is tackling GDPR and let's say a general example, let's say you're scanning for PCI and PII, and you want to consider PII as a higher risk versus PCI, or it could be vice versa, but you can configure your risk profiles based on not only just the data types, but the type of permissions, the targets, the metadata, and based on your defined risk, we'll start tagging all these locations to present whether it's falling under a high risk or medium or low. So as soon as you click on the location, that's the information will be displayed to you. So as you can see, this is falling under GDPR critical. We'll also capture and show you the file permissions of that location. So you'll exactly know which user has access to it and what sort of access do you actually have on these locations. And this is both on domain and localhost. We'll also show you the metadata, so you know who's the owner, when was the file created and modified, what sort of matches were detected inside them. So you can see that these were actually some of the PCI or card numbers that actually has been detected on them. And one thing to mention, the tool itself is a PCI compliant tool, so we are never going to present a complete 16-digit number, even when displaying the matches to the administrator. So now let's say you've actually reviewed the matches, and accordingly, you can just simply, you can now go ahead and take actions. You've decided that, okay, I've reviewed them and now I want to go ahead and take an action on it. You can either select the entire location in one go, which is, take actions on the entire target, or maybe if you wanted to do, you can even select different locations and take actions on them. So you'll be able to do remediation options, which are the things that we talked earlier, which is, you could be able to mask them. You'll be able, which is, replacing the middle part of the number with X's. You can quarantine it. That means move from original location to a secured location. You can delete it permanently. That's a DoD level 3 delete. That means it's non-recoverable. And you can even encrypt it as well on the same location. The is protected. ZIP files will be created. And let's say the user who's using at the moment is not the person to take a decision, and you want to delegate that remediation to a different user in the organization, which will be the data owner. You can just simply click on data owner. Based on the Active Directory sync, you'll be able to see all the lists. And let's say this is the user you want to delegate to. You can select the, you can use the default email. You can customize it. You can select the kind of options you want to give to that user, and then you can just hit delegate. And this will send out an email alert to the user to go ahead and take an action on that data.
And they can sign in with their, with their normal Active Directory account.
Absolutely.
And just carry on. So, and then, I mean, they would obviously have the context around that. And obviously you have sent to probably the best person to take the decision. That's the whole point of it. They will then be able to take the right decision on that data based on the contextual, the availability in the context of the kind of data that we're dealing with. So it's obviously mask, delete, or quarantine it, and put it in the right place. The tagging that we were touching on earlier, in terms of risk and risk tagging, I mean, if you've got certain types of data in certain location on a certain target, and that that's the right place to be storing that data, and you're happy with that, I mean, you wouldn't go and flag that as a high risk, would you?
Yep, correct. So this is the exact reason why we actually have the risk profile. So it's there are various different ways you can actually set it up, basically. So data types is just one of the ways you would actually set it up. And of course, you'll be able to define, let's say you were actually configuring it. I want to consider a location, let's say, if you define it as high risk, if that location has, I'm just going to pick any one, UK VAT number, for instance. And you can even put a value to it. So let's say you want to be considered as high only if there were actually a number of 3 instances. There are various different ways you'll be able to use it, like you can use equal to, greater than, and all the other options. But together with the data type itself, you'll be able to see, okay, where do you want this to be actually defined? Do you want to define it for all the locations, or maybe just very particularly some few of the locations, a few targets? You'll be able to also define this by metadata. So you'll be able to define whether you want this to be considered only when a document and there's a specific owner and it's falling under that rate range. Similar to that, you'll actually configure it for email and even for the file system as a user. You can even configure it based on the access that you have. And let's say you wanted to actually find out all the locations that actually are in my organization. If that location has access by the default user groups users, I want that to be considered as high. So it's just one of the ways you can do it, but you can use it in different ways as well. And then, of course, based on the operations.
You've got a lot of different options here in terms of how to go about, automating and understanding the data that comes through. I mean, obviously, the major issue is if you find sensitive data. Doesn't matter what type of it, we just call it company sensitive data, and it's lying on, I don't know, an unsecured location, or it's on a notebook or workstation, which really it should not be stored. That's exactly the kind of thing that you need to know about, so you can take the right, right decisions and sort those problems out. And also, I think for a business, they'd like to work out how it got there as well, and then learn from that and fix that problem. So it's a fantastic way to get a view of what's actually happening in the organization from a data perspective, data and data security perspective.
Absolutely.
From a reporting perspective, I mean, obviously guys are looking for, finding needles in a haystack, and then they're remediating that data and they're taking action, or they eventually they find out, and that, for whatever reason they're happy that it stays there, and they mark that as an accepted risk or whatever the situation is. Maybe you could run us through some of the reporting, so we can, guys can see how things are improving or what risk level they're at and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So we do reportings in various different ways. So I'll actually go one by one in each one of them. The very first type of reporting that we do is for the dashboard, dashboard is pretty much like a summarization of your entire organization. This is where you're able to see your risk over time. You're able to actually find out how your matches have been found and how the graphs is actually going. And you can change this graph from anywhere between last 7 days to last 10 years. The idea is the dashboard is to give you an overview of your entire organization on how your data discovery is currently going and how you're also moving towards the remediation stages. All this report can actually be downloaded from the dashboard itself. It's what we call a summary report. And again, you can actually use different types of formats are available in this reporting. So you have PDF, HTML, XML, text, and CSV. The second type of reporting, the way you can download, is the target group report. Now, this is based on, for example, the example we were using is, let's say we create an entire group for the call center and all those machines in the call center are actually part of it. And you wanted to take a look at the reporting for the entire group instead of individually going to each one of those targets separately. You can just select the target name. Let's say it's network shares or the call center. You can choose now if you want to see a group target report, which is for all the targets in one go, or you want a group current consolidated report. That means for all the scans that have been done on your call center inventory. And also if you wanted to just see the report for the latest scans only. And again, all the file formats are going to be available in them. And then if needed, you can even choose to include the match samples in them. Then we have the target report, which is for individual targets. You want a detailed report for that. This is where you're able to download reports again as consolidated. Let's say you did 2 scans on a target and you want a single report that shows you both the scan results, or you can do isolated. That is a separate report for scan 1 or a separate report for scan 2. And again, you'll be able to have different formats in which you'll be able to download it. And you can even include the match samples as well. The other type of report is the investigate. Now, because of the lot of information that actually is getting captured, or rather over the course of time, you've actually scanned for different data types, you've actually had different risk profiles that actually has been hit. You'll be able to filter this. So let's say, for instance, I want to see all the locations that are falling under GDPR critical risks that I actually have defined. And based on this, it'll populate all the locations in the organization which are falling under this risk, and I can just simply export this into a report as well, which becomes your custom report. And of course, this can not only just be filtered by risk profiles. You can filter it by targets. You can filter it by target types. You can filter it by file formats. You wanted to go ahead and see in the organization. You can filter it by metadata and so on. And lastly, we also offer ODBC integration. That is, the database of the appliance can be integrated with ODBC ready applications on things like Power BI or SAP Crystals, and you can be able to build your own reporting portfolios as well. And also, the entire tool actually has an API front. So all that reporting, in fact, including everything that we've actually seen so far, can actually be done by the API as well. And if needed, you'll be able to even pull individual reports in JSON formats or different formats via the API, which can be fed into a different reporting tool as well.
Oh,
Wow.
that's fantastic.
Powerful. Really, really powerful. I know we're coming up to the point where we are getting short on time. We've still got about 5 or 10 minutes to go. Just out of interest, how quick and easy is this to deploy? Obviously, working with Symbiosys in partnership with GroundLabs, if a organization wanted to roll this out, and let I know it's going to be how long's a piece of strings. It depends on how the configuration, the setup, the complexity. But as an average, how long would it take to implement something like this, get it up and running, and get scanning and finding that vulnerable data?
But that's where we really outshine. The appliance itself can be deployed in 15 to 30 minutes, and the agent, once it's actually installed, so you can actually be doing your sensitive data discovery under an hour. So you install the appliance, install an agent, and then you're just ready to go ahead and kick off the scan in the targets inside your organization.
We've had successful deployments in hours. And back, and obviously over time refine the system to the business's requirements. But in terms of get value, value's there very fast. We're talking hours, not weeks and days. It's really very, very quick to get going. POCs come together very quickly as well. And customers that are serious about discovering data and understanding what's in the environment, we welcome POCs. They obviously show value quite quickly. We tend to find customers that we have run POCs that they've realized they've got data lying in places that they just didn't even know was there. I think that's the biggest problem, particularly in larger enterprises, is that data sprawl is a real thing, and people just they just don't realize how bad it can be.
Yeah. What about organizations in the respect that they say, okay, I'm going to roll this out. We're up, we're running. We do a data discovery. We cleanse our data, reorganize it, and get sorted. Can they do this on a kind of a one-off basis? Or obviously the scheduling, it's important that they don't do just a one-off. A one-off is going to discover a first off. But obviously this is going to be an ongoing issue they're going to have to work and deal with as well.
Absolutely. I worked with a CISO the other day, and we were chatting, and he was saying, it's like going to the gym. It doesn't help going to the gym once a year. You're not going to make progress. You need to be going to the gym on a daily, weekly basis, and that's the same thing with data security and discovery and remediation, all those kinds of things. Is that you need to be, it's a discipline, and it needs to be done. Kind of at least weekly, in order for you to really get the value and make sure that you're able to protect those data assets. So no, I think this is definitely it's not a one-time deal. It's certainly not an annual thing. It's a weekly thing at the least.
Sure. And let's just talk a little bit. I know, again, costings will vary depending on organization size, but is this a kind of a one-off purchase? Is this a subscription-based model? How does it work typically for most organizations? Obviously, they're going to have hand-holding expertise, support, all that. But how does it work typically for majority of organizations?
It's quite simple, but I'm going to let Gurminder unpack this one a little bit. There are one or two variations. I don't want to get that wrong.
Yep, that's the problem. So I'll take that. So it's a subscription-based model. So what you actually would do is you would actually purchase the tool for a subscription that could be for 1 year and 3 years and onwards. And then what we do is we actually do a license based on the data volume, which I think would be the easiest to manage for an organization, not based on the number of targets or the number of users. So the entire total volume that you actually have in the organization, we can actually confirm that. You'd purchase a license for that for a certain subscription. That could be 1 year, and then you can actually scan that data anywhere in the organization. You can actually have it scanned on thousands and thousands of targets, or maybe even just a few hundreds.
There's one other variation, though, is in terms of the pro version and that kind of thing. So that's the only other variation. Hey, Gurminder, I'm not entirely sure what those flavors on were, because I know that has changed in the last little while.
Yes, indeed. So the enterprise recon actually has 3 different versions, and of course the model will remain the same. It's only the pricing that actually that changes with each model. So we actually have enterprise recon PCI, which is focused only on the PCI DSS data types. Then we have the enterprise recon PII, which includes the PCI data types and also has introduction to PII data types and includes the RESTful API access as well. And then we have the Pro, Enterprise Recon Pro, with what we are looking at today, wherein you're able to integrate with ODBC ready applications. So you have extra features that actually we call them as a CISO suite, where you're not only just scanning a data, but you're getting the entire risk insights in your entire organization. And that is another model that actually is on top of it, or another version, and that the pricing for that is different to each one of them.
Yeah. And what about proof of concept? Pat, you just mentioned proof of concept. Is this something that if an organization was interested in just seeing how it would work for them, that there's an opportunity to, I'm going to use word trial very loosely because I appreciate, this is not something you can just necessarily rock up, turn on and turn off, but is there a way of them testing the water first to see how it would benefit their organization? And that proof of concept then leads to, obviously the subscription base thereafter.
Yeah, I think, we would engage with the customer and have a discussion about what their specific outcomes need to be. And we would then advise on the way forward. If it seems a good fit for a POC, we would gladly run one.
And that's quite important to mention as well. The partnership here between GroundLabs and Symbiosys is tremendous. But what is really important is that Symbiosys are there to provide that consultancy opportunity as well, to work with the client, find out more about their needs, find out what needs to be done, how it will be rolled out, and then implement that proof of concept, and then provide all the support and hand-holding thereafter as well. That's the value add that Symbiosys is adding as a valued reseller of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Further to that though, we also tend to understand most of the systems that we're looking at. Not say every single one of them, but certainly, Active Directory, Azure, Exchange, all those kinds of things, SQL. So those are places that we have significant skills. So I think it's further than just what we bring in terms of the GroundLabs component, but it's how we interact and can work with all the other bits that we can add value to around that.
Yeah, no, brilliant. We're running out of time. We've got 2 minutes left. Any further questions, Patrick, for Gurminder, just to kind of wrap up today's session?
No, I think it's been a good session. I've enjoyed the walkthrough and asking all the questions. So it was good from my side. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Likewise for me, Patrick. It was a really great session and really nice. Actually, that was really good questions also.
Brilliant. So there you go. We're coming to the end of this morning's show. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been really interesting. I've learned a lot just sitting back and just listening and watching the demonstrations, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers have too. If you want to find out more about how Symbiosys can make your IT solutions better in partnership with GroundLabs, you can visit the website at symbiosis.it. Lots more information available there. If you want a little bit more information about GroundLabs, maybe you want to understand a little bit more about the project, have a chat with Patrick and the team. They're waiting for your call. Drop us an email. You can do that by going to the website and actually using one of the contact pages, or fire an email off to us as well. We'd love your inquiry, have a conversation, learn more about your business and how we can help you. And remember, we're not just tied, even though Patrick's sitting in sunny Cape Town in South Africa, we do provide the solutions all around the world. There's business without borders, or IT without borders, as they say. So finally, I will leave you. Big thanks to Gurminder. Big thanks to Patrick. From myself, David Bell, and we will see you again at some point very soon for another conversation, which will, open up lots of doors and opportunities. Until then, thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.